One of the biggest problems you can face as a PMU artist is uneven shading. Banding in your work, being unable to get soft fronts of your brows, uneven patches. Well, I have a solution for you with this shading exercise. You can follow along with me. To make the shading look super blended, I will use some methods that you may not have seen before, but are my secret weapon to getting perfect results on clients. At the end of the video, I'm going to give you a checklist of great hacks to follow when you're working on clients to make sure that you don't get uneven shading. So make sure you watch to the end. So as you can see, I've drawn an equilateral triangle, 3 centimeters on each side, and I'm going to start whip shading. I will just draw your attention to the fact that I am running this video at twice the speed, so I really don't work this quickly. My hand doesn't move this quickly and I don't work this quickly, but essentially it would have been double the length. So I'm going to start at the top, and what we want is darkest at the top and going down to really shaded, faded bottom. So this can relate to your brows and ombre, or even lips if you do an ombre on lips. Going from dark to light, so darker tails of brows, going to lighter fronts. What I chose to do with this video was do almost like an entire pass without wiping, because I see so many people doing brows like this. They'll do an entire pass and then wipe the work, and then there's nothing there and everyone panics. I never work like that. I'm always checking as I go, because how do you know what's going on underneath if you're not checking? But actually I thought I would do a full pass on this triangle to let you see that whilst it looks great on the surface, underneath it's quite uneven. So I'm trying to work consistently from the top point of the triangle. Now, whip shading should be a movement where the dots of the movement gradually spread out, so that the dots start closer together at the darkest point and then spread out. So it's a really good one for an ombre. So as you can see, I'm working downwards. I am actually only making contact with the latex in one direction, which is the downward stroke. Even though you'll see my hand moving back up, it's not a pendulum. I am just whip shading. And I'm trying to work really consistently, so working in one space and then right onto the one next to it and then onto the one next to it, so that I'm working consistently. Otherwise you're going to get really patchy results. Whenever I'm shading a stroke, I want to start the next section below halfway down. What I mean by that is we don't just start the next section directly underneath the one we've just finished. If we want our whip shading to seamlessly blend, then the sections are going to have to overlap by about 50%. This is how we get rid of that banding. But it's also by doing the movement properly, by properly feathering out the stroke. So you'll see that mine goes a lot lighter towards the bottom of the triangle. And I'm going to overlap those and keep working. You can see there's some dark patches appearing, so we're going to have to go and even those out afterwards. But I want the bottom of that triangle to stay really light, like the fronts of brows. So as I'm moving down my whip shading strokes, I'm going to leave a little bit more of a gap in between them each time, so that there's more negative space, there's more air in between them, in between the dots. So at the top of the triangle, my strokes are going to be really tightly packed together. And then as I go down to the bottom of the triangle, I want them to be more spaced out so that we let more of the latex in. So at that bottom edge of the triangle, you can see that there's much more sort of lighter patches between the strokes. So let's just go all the way to the bottom, and when you're doing this I want you to practice stopping at the line, because we want to be shady, fluffy, light, but also accurate. So I want you to make sure that you stop at that bottom line. So all the time I'm looking to see if there's anywhere that looks a little lighter, that needs a bit more work, and then just going in and putting some light whip shading strokes in there. So let's give that a spray with some alcohol and wipe off. And you can see that actually it's quite patchy under there. There's some dark sections in the middle. The top doesn't look that well blended. It looks, there's more darkness on one side, some light patches in the middle. So now as I work, I'm going to keep wiping as I work. So we're going to go back to the top again. I'm not going to put too much in this top because this looks quite dark. So I'm going to space out my strokes on this second pass as well. I'm not going to just do as much as I did on that first pass at the top because it doesn't need it. And then still overlapping, I'm going to start working down, but I'm going to ignore that dark patch. I don't want to work on that because it's already got plenty of saturation in it. So I've just started on the other side of that, and you can see that on the there's a sort of dark patch going down the middle, and there's two pale patches either side where I'm working now. So we want to fill that in. The machine I'm using is my Allure Ambi, which I absolutely love. And with it, I'm using a 1RL. It's quite a small one. I think it's a 0.25. So I'm making things quite difficult for myself. If it was a bigger needle, it would be quicker. Quick spray as I'm working. That's better. It's better. There's still some dark patches, but it's a lot better. You'll be able to see easier because the camera is a bit further away. When you're up close, it's honestly so much harder to see. So it will be far easier for you from a distance to actually see the shading and where these patches are. So I'm still just going to try and avoid those dark areas and fill in a little bit more on the lighter patches. So what I have done as well, and as you can see, I'm cleaning as I go, just checking to make sure that that's blending. But I am just using whip shading strokes in one direction. So just working away there, filling in that light section. So up to now, it's been pretty much 2 passes of just working in the same way, really, just trying to make it as consistent as possible. As you do more passes, you can just work on the paler areas. You don't need to work on anywhere that's already well saturated or dark. So you don't need to just consistently work the same in every pass. This video is brought to you by VIPMU, the mentorship that encompasses your entire PMU business. We teach you amazing skills, but also how to market your work effectively and in turn get more clients. Click the link below for more info. So definitely one of the things I push is making sure that you clean your work. Now, as we can see, the bottom needs a little bit more. It's the front of your brow should be faded, but it should still be there because obviously that would heal to nothing. So I'm going to start just adding a little bit more, but just making sure that those strokes have more distance between them. Quick wipe there, but still there seems to be almost like a horizontal line where that lighter patch is. So I'm going to do some bigger strokes there, just filling in anywhere that looks like it's like it needs a little bit more work. But here we go. Here is what I do on people. These are diagonal strokes. I'm starting to put in some diagonal strokes. Now, what I class these diagonal strokes as is a little bit of like a zipper effect. It's going to zip those vertical strokes together, and I use this on people a lot. And can you see that they're really quite far apart, diagonal both ways? And that is a really great blending stroke. Just make sure that they're far apart, and that will be that way to just tie everything together. You can just see that just looks so much softer already. I really do use that all the time, and I use it almost exclusively on the fronts of brows, and I use it a lot on lips. If there's any pale patches on lips, I tend to blend them together. So if you've got a dark patch and a light patch in your shading, blending them with a diagonal stroke that's far apart will just velvetize the whole thing. It just draws it all together without you oversaturating and overshading. So that is my thing, and I use that, as I said, all the time on the fronts of ombre. So in that little light patch, can you see I'm just like tickling it in? So that is definitely my secret sauce to perfect shading, is and blending on people, is to add some diagonal strokes as well. We've just got a couple more patches, and then this is looking really good. So I really want you to practice using that diagonal stroke to blend your work and see if you can get some really nice soft results. So here are my top tips to help you get great shading on clients. Number 1, check your work regularly. You don't know what's going on under all that pigment if you don't wipe it. Your work could be uneven and you can't see. Regularly wipe your work. Number 2, stand away from your work. Dark and pale patches show up much more when you change your perspective by stepping away. I'm up and down like a yo-yo when I work, but for good reason. Number 3, and this is a great one, squint your eyes when you look at your work. Blurring the shading will make the dark and pale patches visible. Try this with your latex and you'll see how effective it is. Number 4, turn your machine down until you're an expert. It might take you longer, but you can always blend dots, but lines are far harder to blend. If your machine doesn't turn down enough, then it may be time to invest in a new one. I love both the Fleiss machine and the Allure Ambi. Both go down to 4 volts. Number 5, practice. I know it sounds old, but practice makes continuous improvement. Spend hours on your latex and the improvement will come on clients so quickly. Now we've mastered whip shading, but what about the other needle movements? So let's go into pendulum, circles and etching with this video here.